Hi.
Hi,
There's a
Steve.
lot of problem with your sound still. It's very crunchy and loud.
Okay, let me see if I can change something. 1 second.
Different device or something.
Okay.
Everyone should be able to adjust their volume on their computers.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to mute everybody. Hopefully that'll leave me unmuted. Can you all hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Bossy.
Yeah, I think my sound is fixed now. I think we figured out the problem.
Yes, now we can hear you perfectly.
Okay,
Yeah, you
perfect.
had two phones on.
Okay, amazing. Thank you. Sorry about that, but thank you so much for your patience. I just want to say that, you know, one of the most incredible things about and the importance of the JWC and the Women's Circle is really, you know, women, no matter how old we are, no matter what stage of life we're in, just the fact that we're a woman, we're always giving and giving to our families, to our friends, to our neighbors, to our coworkers, you know, and this is an amazing opportunity for us all to plug in and refuel for ourselves so we can fill up, be with friends, you know, fill ourselves up spiritually as well. And so that we can really feel like we are so filled up that now we have enough to keep giving. And so this is such a great opportunity for that. And I really feel like, especially with the pandemic, our lives are even more stressful. There are more things pulling at us and everything takes triple the amount of work. So it makes it even more important for us to be together tonight, learning and growing and having fun together. And we're so excited for, you know, the event tonight, making Challah together, and looking forward to doing this with you all tonight. So I hope everybody has a fantastic time tonight. Let's all just roll up our sleeves and have an amazing time together. And now I'm going to give it up to Craney, who's going to introduce our incredible guest presenter tonight, Rachi Pinson. Thank you, Craney.
Thank you, Bossy. I agree. It's an absolute joy to be able to do this women's event together, to see so many women on the screen at the same time. This is just the energy coming off the screen. I just love it. I am delighted to be able to introduce Rebbetzin Rachi Pinson, mother, artist, lecturer, mentor, author, and of course, avid baker. She is the founder of the website therisinglife.net. And prior to COVID, you would probably find Rebbetzin Rachi somewhere around the world conducting a Challah workshop. Tonight, she joins us live from Brooklyn, New York, where the time is currently 10:07 p.m. So thank you, Rachi, for accommodating us on our California time zone. My connection to Rachi actually goes back a little over 25 years, where we were roommates for a year abroad in Sydney, Australia. At that time, Rachi was not baking challah. I don't even know if she even knew how. We were too busy doing tea cleanses and mineral mud masks, 6 a.m. walks down to Bondi Beach, where incidentally, she was way too chatty for that time of day. I discovered that Rachi was a creator. She's a connector. She directed a musical for the girls' high school where she was a mentor. She has this passion and relentless creative energy, this inner stamina that left most of us breathless. I remember one spring we traveled to Vancouver, Rachi's hometown, to help her parents, the local Chabad presence, with 2 special events that they would be having back to back: a huge Women of Valor gala dinner and a Passover experience adventure that involved professional set designers from the local film studios. I was astounded that it was 20-year-old Rachi who was so instrumental in pulling off both of these events. Before my brother's wedding, I turned to Rachi. She turned to her talent for creating and her eye for design and sketched a most perfect dress that I had made for the wedding. And then before my own wedding, Rachi took my initials and my husband's initials and came up with a beautiful monogram that actually incorporated the meaning of my name as well. I love it to this day. Life on different coasts kept us both very busy, so Rachi and I saw each other very rarely, just occasionally, and it was usually at the annual Chabad conference of Chabad Rebbitzins in New York City. In my peripheral consciousness, I had heard that Rachi had written a challah cookbook, but being perfectly content with my mom's recipe, I didn't really give it much thought. That changed. A few months ago, I received as a gift her book, Rising, the Book of Challah. And as I leafed through it, all I can say is that I was moved. There, in beautiful, deep writing, the gorgeous art, the perfectly fabulous recipes, and the down-to-earth relatability was my friend Rachi. The wisdom, the passion, the artful attention to detail, it's truly a book of art and inspiration. She's clearly still got that stamina that would keep most of us breathless. All I could think was that I would love to bring her to the women in my community. I would love to share her with the women in Orange County. And so here we are. Without further ado, I'm so delighted to welcome the Queen of Challah herself, Rebbitzin Rachi Pinson. I just need to figure out how to unmute her and get her center stage, and we will be moving right along.
I think I just
Here we are. Okay, I don't think she's muted.
Oh goodness.
Now I need to just spotlight you. Hold on, I'm going to spotlight you, and then you will, there you are. Hold on, I'm coming. Spotlight you. Rachi, thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh my gosh, that was some trip down memory lane. If anybody doesn't mind, we'll just like ditch the challah bake, and I think Franny and I have some catching up to do. That was incredible. You just brought back so many memories that I completely haven't thought about in over 20 years. That's incredible. Wow, we did those things together. Yeah, now we're overdue for a long chat. So when we're done with this, we're going to schedule one of those. In the meantime, I am very, very excited to be virtually in California, although in real life in New York. And that's one of the amazing advantages of this time with all its challenges and difficulties, and they are real, this ability to connect with people all over the world. And I don't even have to pack a bag or go through a security line. I'm kind of loving it. The bare feet doesn't hurt either. So I'm really excited to be with all of you tonight, and this evening for you, tonight for me. And yes, Craney does remember well that I am more of a morning person, but having married a night person, things have shifted a little bit. So, you know, we've adjusted. So now 10 p.m. and living in New York as well, the city that doesn't sleep. 10 p.m. is not as late as it once was for me. So I'm really happy. I'm gonna actually take myself off the speaker view so I could see all of you. I don't know, do you still see me as the main screen? Yes? Okay, great, because I really wanna see all of you. And my favorite part of what I do and traveling around the world, leading challah workshops and teaching people how to make challah. Oh my God, hi Deanie, I see you there. My favorite part really is getting to meet all these incredible women. And of course, at the end of the evening or the beginning, sometimes both, sitting with each person personally, signing my cookbook for them, being able to write a personal message to them, and feeling like I can make these incredible connections with the most amazing women that I've met all over the world. So even though we can't, you know, reach out and hug each other in person tonight, I feel like this is a Zoom hug with all of you. And I do have a special thing that I'm offering for these Zoom bakes, which is that I will personally sign a book for each person who wants to purchase one, and I will send them off to California myself. So I think that you, between your Rebbitzin Craney and Rebbitzin Bassi, there are forms on their website where you registered for the event to purchase a book. So I'll get them out in the next day or two. So if you have a chance tonight or tomorrow to purchase a book, make sure you tell me your name, a little something about you so I can write you a heartfelt and personal message and send it off to you with love. So here we are. This is a really powerful time of the year. And our sages actually say that if there is one time in the year that you are going to make the blessing on the separation of Challah, do the mitzvah of Challah, it is this week. The week between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is so charged, and there's such incredible opportunities for connection at this time. And there is no better way to connect than with this mitzvah of Challah, and we're going to talk about why. So wherever I go, and I go a lot of places, my Challah has taken me all over. Wherever I go, I get this question. So I figured, let's get this off the table. And people want to know right away, what's up with you? Because, you know, I think I have friends who wrote cookbooks, because when you write a cookbook, you meet other people who write cookbooks. So the other people I've met who wrote cookbooks, and I tell them, do you get this question everywhere you go? And they say, no, everyone just assumes we like cooking. But when you write a highly specific 360 pages worth of Challah, people kind of want to know what's up with you and Challah. So I'll share a little bit of my background. Craney already mentioned to you that I grew up in Vancouver, British Columbia, where my family still lives. My parents still live there. And growing up, we were the only kosher family for a long time. They were kind of the pioneer Chabad shluchim in Vancouver. And growing up, there was nothing kosher in the city. And everything had to be made from scratch. So, you know, I figured that if you want cheese, you know, you got to go milk a cow, make the cheese, like that's how it's done. That was normal. And, you know, everything was homemade. That's just the way it was, except for one thing. There was one thing that always came from a store. And can you guess what that is? As Craney said, back then in Sydney, when we were roomies, I did not know how to make challah. As a matter of fact, I didn't even know that challah could be made from scratch. This was such a foreign concept, because the only thing we ever had kosher in Vancouver and always had was a kosher bakery. And this was very lucky for my mom, not just because it was one thing less that she had to make from scratch, but because her and challah have a history. So early on in her marriage, she tried making challah. She doesn't like to talk about it much. It was an epic fail. My dad still chuckles if it's mentioned. It involved her mother-in-law. And after that, she had a severe form of challah PTSD. Now, you laugh, but everywhere I go, if I mention challah PTSD, I get a nod. Somebody out there has challah PTSD. There is somebody there who once tried making challah and failed in an epic way and thinks that they and challah don't mesh. So that was my mom. I'm here to cure challah PTSD. One of the things I like to do, and we're going to do that tonight when you see just how much fun and how easy it is and how hard it is to mess up, really. Anyways, so growing up, I thought challah grew in the bakery. It came from there each week, like clockwork. It was great. I didn't know any better. And that worked great for me all through many years, through Sydney, where I had no need to make challah, did other things. And it worked great until it didn't. So fast forward a few years, and I was a newlywed. My husband and I were asked to go to Kobe, Japan, to lead the Jewish community there for the high holidays. So they were sort of in between. Their rabbi had left. It was sort of a community that was fading out after the war, and they had no rabbi. So they asked us to come for the high holidays that year and lead the community. So we were really excited. This was a great adventure. What could go wrong? You know, we packed our suitcases full of tuna, because what else do you need, really? A sprinkle of idealism, of course, and off we went to Kobe, Japan. So we arrived, it was right about this time of year. It was a few days before Rosh Hashanah. And we arrived in Kobe and sat down with the community leaders to discuss the upcoming holidays. So as we're talking about the schedule and services and the meals, I turned to the shul president in all innocence. I was quite naive, and I say to him, so Mr. Jacobs, where did you want challah in Kobe? And he looked at me really funny, and he's like, oh no, poor girl. You know, he said, no, you don't understand. In Kobe, the Rebbitzin makes the challah for the whole community. So newsflash, I'm the Rebbitzin, apparently. And number two, I'm gonna be making challah for everyone. Didn't even know it could be done. But as Cranny mentioned, I don't back down from a challenge. As a matter of fact, tell me something can't be done. That'll get me doing it. And I made my way into that kitchen, called my mom in Canada. So she started panicking along with me because she says, what are you asking me? I don't know how to make challah. So she opened up that old trusty cookbook, The Purple Spice and Spirit, and read it out, and I copied it down. This was before you could take a picture and text a recipe. That would have been nice. I went into that kitchen in the shul, and everything was literally in Japanese. Had to figure out what was flour, what was sugar before I could even get started. And I got to work. And it took me the better part of a day. Who am I kidding? It took me a whole day. And at the end of that day, I had some 50 loaves of challah in front of me, and they had risen and they smelled amazing. They were golden. And I've probably made prettier ones since, but I thought they were just the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. And as we served the community that high holiday season, and I helped with a lot of other things in the kitchen, you know, the salads, the chicken, whatever had to be done. But whenever I served those chalot that I had made, I felt like I was not just giving them food, but I was really giving them something of myself. And it felt like there was something really powerful about this. So I resolved that when I go back to New York, where bakeries are plentiful and the temptation to buy challah is always there, that I was going to bake challah each week. I was going to make challah baking a part of my life. In growing my family, I was going to have challah be a part of this. I didn't know what a big part it was going to be eventually, but long before that, I knew at the very least I was going to be baking challah every week. And I did. I came back to New York, and life got hectic, had my first child, had more, started a career, started a community. And through it all, every week on Friday, I went back into my kitchen. And as I mixed and I kneaded and I braided and I waited, it began to occur to me that there was even more to this than I had originally thought. That this was not just a recipe for bread, but in fact, what I was doing in this bowl was really informing every aspect of my life. It occurred to me that the recipe that I was making in this bowl was really a recipe for life, which is why the title of my book is Recipes for Challah and Life. So I was really excited. I thought I had this major epiphany. Whoa, bread is life. Who knew? Well, it turns out a lot of people knew. Actually, it goes way back. I'm also, Craney did not mention, but I am late to most parties. So this one, you know, I was like 3,000 years late too. So anybody knows who were the first people to discover the rising process and bread that rises? Any clues? Anybody? We get some hands. I'm gonna go to the next page because maybe I'm missing someone. No. Okay, let's think Passover. When we avoid bread, right? The ancient Egyptians. So they were the first to discover that if you left flour and water alone, magic happens. And they loved their bread so much that when the archaeologists uncover the hieroglyphics from that time, they found that their symbol for bread is the very same as their symbol for, you guessed it, life. Yeah, they knew it back then. And you know, Everybody's a little freaked out by gluten these days. Raise your hand if you're freaked out by gluten in California. No, thank you, Wendy. Somebody, okay, good. Are we not freaked out by gluten? Okay, I live in downtown Brooklyn, otherwise known as Park Slope, and gluten is like a bad word. You don't even feed your dog gluten in downtown Brooklyn. You know, your puppy doesn't get gluten. No one gets gluten. So I had to undo a lot of this gluten is evil thing. I actually write about it in my book. If you are celiac, yes, gluten is truly evil for you. Do not eat it. I have an amazing gluten-free recipe in my book. I also talk about why we think that gluten is bad for us and how to make bread easier to digest. I have sourdough recipes and sourdough starter and all that stuff. But bread is really the staff of life. It's been the most perfect form of sustenance. Since then, bread and water, we can exist on those two things alone. And really, it's in our lingo. Think about it. The person who brings home the livelihood, what do we call them? The breadwinner, right? And you know that stuff we use to buy everything we want or need? It's dough, right? Dough. So we have it in our lingo. Bread is the staff of life. Bread contains within it all the elements of the universe. Earth, wind, water, fire. In Kabbalah, these are the 4 elements which create the world. They come together to create a perfect loaf. But the truth is, we are not here tonight to speak about bread. We're here to speak about challah. And they would seem to be quite similar. In fact, the Hebrew word for bread, like our daily bread that we eat every day, is, anybody knows any Hebrew here? Yes?
Lechem.
Lechem, exactly. And the truth is, I don't know if you've ever thought of this, but lechem and challah are very similar. They both have the lamed chet. One is chet lamed, one is lamed chet. So they both start the same way. The difference is how they end. Lechem ends with a final mem, a mem sofit. And a final mem, if you've ever looked at the shape, it's a closed box. And that's really what lechem, our daily bread, is about. It's about the survival of the body, the survival of the self, the ego, keeping ourselves, our bodies alive, our families alive. That's what our daily bread is about. But challah is never just about keeping ourselves alive. Challah starts the same way as lechem, but the difference is in how it ends. Challah ends with the letter Hey. And the letter Hey is the most magical letter in the Hebrew alphabet. Our sages tell us, Behei nivra ha'olam. The whole world was created with the letter Hey. We are now in the week of creation. Rosh Hashanah celebrated the day of the creation, the final day of creation of the human. And we are now in these days of creation. Behei nivra ha'olam. The whole world came into being with Hey. Say Hey with me together. Say the letter Hey. Hey, it's breath. In the Torah, we are told, Lo al halechem levado yichye ha'adam. A man does not live on bread alone.
I still can't hear.
Ki al kol motzei pi Hashem yichye ha'adam. Each one of us and all of creation is alive by the breath of God, this divine breath that enlivens all of creation and each one of us at every single moment. The world was not created and then our creator walked away. As we say every day, HaMachadesh betuvo b'chol yom tamid maseh bereshit. Every single day, every single moment, the world is being recreated. There is a new breath of life coming into us and coming into the world. And we are really charged entering into this new year. We are charged with a mission. Quite simply, never let the challah get stale. Never let it get old. And especially as women, we are Em Kol Chai. Chava is created on Rosh Hashanah. And what is she told? She's called Chava because she is Em Kol Chai. She's the mother of all life. Each woman, in all many ways that we nurture, is the mother of life. We are the feeders. We are the nurturers of creation. In the Talmud, it says the man brings home flax, but can he wear flax? The man brings home wheat, but can he eat wheat? The woman takes the raw materials of the universe and she transforms them. She makes them into something nourishing, something that gives life. This is what we do. So we have incredible power and incredible responsibility. And that is not just to nurture the bodies of our family, but if we are truly the nurturers, then we must nurture the whole self. We must remember that there's so much more, that lo ala lachem levado yichrei ha'adam, that we don't live on bread alone, that we are sustained by that hay that takes the ordinary and makes it magical. We are not at our essence a body, we are a soul. You know, the word challah is the word chol, which means mundane or everyday, the ordinary. But then when you add the hay, that magical hay, that breath of life, the spirit, the awareness of soul, it becomes challah. It transforms. And we have that power as the builders of the home, as the nurturers of creation. We have that power to infuse everything with that awareness, with that hay, with that newness. Rosh Hashanah is Rosh, which means the beginning or the newness, in Hashanah, which can be the word Yashan, which is old. And that celebrates Rosh Hashanah. We're really celebrating, it's the 7th month in the counting of the months. It's the first month in the counting of the seasons, which is solar time. So it's really that idea, like the Zohar, like it says in Kohelet, En chadash tachat hashemesh. There is nothing new. King Solomon says, there is nothing new under the sun. You've heard that. You probably didn't know King Solomon is the one who said it. There's nothing new under the sun. But the Zohar adds, under the moon, there is newness. Chodesh, the month, comes from the word chadash, which is new or to renew. And as women, Rosh Chodesh is our holiday. The months are our holiday because we are charged with renewal. We are charged with this ability to see past the immediate, to understand that there is more than what meets the eye, and to infuse every moment and every aspect of our lives with that awareness. When we come into Yom Kippur, the first thing that happens when we come into Shul, the first words we say, anybody familiar? I don't know if everybody is going to Shul this year, but I'm assuming you've been to Shul in the past, at least some of you, and know the first words. What do we say on Yom Kippur? Kol Nidre. We say, the first thing we say is all our vows are annulled. That is the first thing we do as we come into the most awesome day of the year. We annul our vows. What does that mean? Because words have such power. Words have such power over us. Words have the power. All of creation occurred through speech, and we create it every moment through speech. When we have negative contracts, we are binding ourselves to those negative contracts, whether they're the things we tell ourselves or the things we've been told. If we want to really affect change in our lives, if we want to come into the new year fresh and really, really move forward, we need to loosen those bonds of the negative words, the negative vows that have bound us to an old reality. And this is the idea of Challah. The idea of Challah is that ability to take something as ordinary as bread, as regular as the thing that feeds us and sustains us, and infuse within it a reshit, a newness, a beginning, something magical. As a matter of fact, as we received this commandment to take the piece of dough, we were about to enter into the land of Israel. We were about to become people of the land, working our hands, very involved with the seasons, with the circular time, and really going to get our hands dirty and be very involved in the physical world. And how are we going to maintain that incredible connection that we had in the desert when we were being fed the manna and being given everything we needed, living in the spiritual realms? And Hashem gave us these directives as we went into the land of Israel. Reshit arisosechem, Reshit like Rosh Hashanah, like Bereshit. the beginning of your dough. And there's only 5 things in the Torah that are called Reshit. And our sages tell us for these 5 things, the entire creation exists. One of them is Challah. The beginning of your dough, take off a piece. This will maintain your connection. This will remind you that the source of all of our blessings is beyond us, that there is something larger than ourselves. And we always, because at our core, we are that hay, we are that breath of life. We are a soul at our essence. We are connected to the infinite light at every moment. And all we have to do, we reach into our dough, we pull off that piece and we remind ourselves of that connection, that we are connected to the source of all blessings and all life at every moment. And as such, our lives are never just about surviving. It's never just about staying alive, but it's about thriving, being connected, staying connected to our source. And then every moment we are not just living, but we are truly alive. And I want to just end off, before we start making challah together, I want to end off, the blessing that we give each other in Judaism when we bless each other with long life is arichut yamim, which really translates into length of days. It even more precisely, the fullness of days, because we really don't know what's going to be. None of us know. And I think more than ever, we realize how little is in our control and how little we really know. We don't know how many years we've been given. But when we bless each other with arichut yamim, with fullness of our days, this we can control. This we can do. We can fill each day. And what is a full day? A day in which we are connected at every moment to the source of life, where nothing gets old, nothing gets stale, it stays fresh and connected. And everyone whom we nurture is infused with this awareness. And then, of course, with that kind of recipe, we and all whom we nurture will rise. And that is what I bless you all, that you should all rise to your fullest selves this year and really discover that inner beauty within yourself, that connection, and stay connected at every moment this year. So every day is full and rich and beautiful. And now we're going to make some challah dough together. I want to see everybody here so I can ask you a question. How many of these gorgeous ladies here have made challah before? Okay, we have a lot of hands. Yes. Okay, Zoe, not you? Yes, okay. Jake, I don't think your name is Jake, but it says Jake on the screen. Okay, I mean, you never know. I'm not going to assume anything, but you don't look like a Jake. Okay, have you baked challah before?
No, only with Craney
Okay. Anybody? I'm on the next screen here. Who do I see? Okay, Adrienne has made challah before. Okay, I want to know here, do we have any challah virgins? Come on. No shame here. Any challah virgins in the house? Yay! It just says iPad, but I see you and you have the sweetest smile. Okay. Okay. So we have some challah virgins in the house. Okay, you know what? I want everyone to raise your hand right now because the truth is, tonight we are all challah virgins. You may think you have made challah many times before, but I hope that tonight when we make it together, it's going to be new, it's going to be fresh, it's going to be like the very first time. I hope tonight we can infuse our challah making with a new awareness and mindfulness and intention, and then your challah baking is going to be something totally different than it was before. So that's my hope for us tonight. So are we ready to bake? Is everybody ready? Can we do this? All right. First thing you're going to need is a bowl. You don't need a lot of equipment to make a challah at home. And really what I love to do is demystify the whole process because, and you know what, it's never better than on this Zoom, because when you come to your Chabad house or to whatever beautiful event and somebody's pre-measured all the ingredients for you and everything's labeled and beautiful, you know it's not going to be like that at home. No one's doing that for you in your kitchen unless you have a sous chef living with you. in which case, good for you. But I really do want to demystify it. I want to show you how easy it is to make in your own kitchen. So all you really need is a bowl and a spoon. If you don't have a spoon, you can even do it without a spoon. Every step in making challah is an opportunity for connection. It's not just that moment where we rip off that dough and make the blessing. Every single step in the process is really an opportunity to connect, to recalibrate our recipe for nurturing, check in with ourselves and see how we're doing, and remind ourselves what we're doing and how powerful it is. So, starts with a bowl, and I wasn't even going to put this in my book because I wrote about all the ingredients. But if anyone has read my book, I haven't written my book. If anyone has read my book, you'll see that at the very end of all the ingredients, I actually stuck in a little snippet about the bowl, because I once tried making challah without a bowl. I had, I was not in my house and I was using a tin pan, and it occurred to me that the bowl is actually really important as well. And you know what? If we're going to be creating something that is alive inside this bowl, something that's going to rise, something that's going to feed off the environment, we need to start with a bowl. It's really like the womb. It's where life happens. So we start with a bowl, which is the perfect shape to make it happen. Bowl and a spoon. Now my bowl is enormous. You do not have to be using such a huge bowl. Oh yeah, Wendy, yours is pretty nice size. Yeah, that's great. So remind me the recipe that I gave, Craney, the recipe that I gave was for the quarter. The quarter recipe.
5 pounds, 5 pounds of flour.
Amazing. This is really exciting. So very often, whoever's organizing the event tells me, no, people don't want to make so much. It's too much. Let's do the smaller. And I really did this in my cookbook because I am aware that not every family eats 8 whole challahs every Shabbat. And no judgment, please, till you've tasted my challah. But I actually divided up the recipes. I don't know if you could see over here, but I divided the recipes, most of the recipes, especially the classic ones, into whole, half, and quarter. So that way, you could choose your own adventure. You can make just 2 challah, you can do the half recipe, which makes 4, or you can do the whole, go the whole way and do a 5-pound bag of flour, which makes 6 large or 8 medium challah. Challah freeze is great, and we'll talk about that later. So what's beautiful about making the whole 5-pound bag is that that's the amount that you can actually make the blessing on. You could take off a piece and make the blessing on that amount. So I'm really glad that we're all making the full amount tonight, because this way, each one of you in your own home can make this blessing tonight. And really, challah is the triumvirate of tshuva, tefillah, and tzedakah. And these are the 3 things that we're told really can affect change in the universe and in our own lives. So challah brings it all together, and there's never more powerful time to do it than now. So I'm really glad that we're all doing the full. Now, if you're not baking tonight and you're just sort of watching, which is perfectly fine, I'm going to make the blessing later on the dough, and you'll answer amen, and you'll be a part of it as well. So no worries. You will still be able to be a part of this blessing tonight. We're all going to draw down a lot of power together. Starts with a bowl. The first ingredient we put into our bowl is, anybody knows? It's the source of all life. If we look for a planet that has life, what's the first thing we look for? Water, right? Sorry, ladies, you're on mute. I'm pretty sure you all know this answer. Okay, water. If there's water, there can be life. All life comes from water, and water is really, truly primordial. Even before God says the first words, let there be light, we're already talking about Ruach Elokim merachefet al pnei hamayim, the spirit of Elokim, which hovers on the face of the water. So the water has been around, and all the water that we have today is eternal. It's from the beginning of time. There's no new water. And water in its perfect flow and its connectivity and its ability to source life is really reminds us of the soul. And so when we put water in, you know, ein mayim ela Torah, water is compared to Torah, water is compared to a higher wisdom, and of course to our own source of life. So when we're putting in the water into our bowl, ladies, I want you to note it's 4 3/4 cups. Now, that is a little bit of an annoying amount, granted, because you'll either have like a 1 cup measuring cup or a 4 cup or an 8 cup. 8 cups are huge. The 4 cups are just shy of 4 3/4. So here's what I suggest. If you're going to make this recipe again, which I think you will after making it once, it's a pretty perfect challah recipe. You're going to, on a one time, fill it up to 4, take another 1 cup, measure 3/4, pour it in, and see where that lands on your measuring cup. For me, it's like right above the Pyrex words. So I know that's 4 3/4, and then I don't have to do that whole annoying measuring thing every time. Now, the temperature of the water, let's talk about that for 1 minute. We're not just pouring in any old water. We are putting in warm water. Now, 4 3/4 cups of warm water. What is warm? First of all, I really want to demystify challah. I want to make it is the most forgiving recipe, I promise. So don't worry so much. It's okay. If the water is warmer, cooler, it will still work. Just not really hot. Many cookbooks will tell you lukewarm. I find that to be a little too cool. If you want a good, nice rising to get started, go for, I like to call it baby bath water. So if you put a baby in there, you know, feel it, it feels, that feels really nice. You're not going to burn the baby. That's good. That's good for the yeast. So that's a nice warm bath. We're creating in here right now an environment for rising. That's what we're doing in this bowl. This is not just a recipe for any food. It is really going to be something alive in our bowl. We have warmth. We have the awareness of the soul. Because when we really encounter another person, when we begin nurturing, when we begin a relationship, we have to start with that awareness that each person whom we encounter, every beautiful face on the screen is a soul, is perfect at their essence. And when we begin our nurturing with that awareness, you know that those whom we nurture will rise. Into that warmth and awareness of soul, we are going to pour a whole lot of sweetness because we want to make the rising happen. And we know that sugar encourages the growth of yeast. And we're also creating something that's not a regular bread. It's a challah. It's for Shabbat or the holiday, and it's special. So maybe you wouldn't put this much sweetness into your weekday bread, but for challah, we go all out. I suggest 1.5 cups of sugar. If you're using honey, you can use honey instead. You can just do 1.25 cups. Honey's a little sweeter than sugar. And there you go. We have our sugar, we have our water, we have sweetness, we have warmth, pure kindness. This is not the time yet for discipline. And we'll talk about that soon, which ingredient represents that. So we have our sugar for the sweetness, we have our water for the soul. It's warm and we've created the perfect environment for rising. So now we're going to put in our yeast. A note about the yeast. Okay, you're going to be using 7 teaspoons of yeast. If you have the dry yeast packets, the envelopes that come 3, yep, like that, you're going to use all 3. You're going to use 3 of those packets. Otherwise, if you have a larger container, you can measure out 7 teaspoons. Let me just make sure.
Rachi?
Yes.
Rachi?
Yes.
I have a couple of questions from people coming. I don't know how complex this might be, but do you think as you're doing it, you might also be able to give simultaneously a smaller measurement? Yes. I know that we posted the full size, but some people are asking me for like a 2-loaf size. So maybe as you're saying, if you can share
Okay.
that.
Absolutely. I'd love to do that for sure. So if anybody wants to do the quarter size, which makes 2 beautiful loaves of challah. Yes, I'm getting some nods there from Jody. Okay. You're like, that's more manageable. I hear you. I do. I really do. Okay. So here you go. That would be 1 cup of water. That would be a 1/4 cup of sugar. All right. And 2.5 teaspoons of yeast, or 2 teaspoons of yeast will be fine, 2 heaping teaspoons. If you have the envelopes, it would be 1 envelope, okay? So there you go, your bowl's still empty. What's going on over there? All right, let's get some water, some sugar, okay? So 1 cup water, 1/4 cup sugar if you're doing the smaller recipe. So a word about the yeast. As you know, yeast is naturally occurring in the air. So if you put flour and water together and leave it alone in a safe environment, the yeast spores that are in the air will feed off of the sugars in there, and it will start fermenting, creating gas bubbles, and that's where the rising comes from. So yeast is naturally occurring. We live in a very fast-paced world, and even though challah is still a process, we've tried to speed it up a little. Thanks to a good German Jew called Mr. Fleischman, we have instant activated dry yeast, which pour it in and voila, you have challah. So we do love speeding things up. And this is a great way to do it, especially if you're baking challah each week and you want to make it into something doable. This is a great way. Now you'll find in the supermarket, there will be instant, active, quick rise, highly active. They just market it as all these different names trying to sell you something new. As long as it says active dry yeast, it could say instant, it could say quick rise, any of those things, they're all the same, they're all good. So don't sweat it. It says instant active dry yeast. It means that that yeast is already activated. The only thing you want to do is check the expiration date. Make sure it's not expired because you do want it to be fresh. What's nice about this stage in the process, it's called proving the yeast, which means we're going to check that our yeast is active and that it is still fresh and doing its job. So if you look into your bowl, if you have our nice little life soup happening here with our warmth and our sweetness and the yeast, you should be seeing some kind of action. Maybe it's foaming, maybe it's little things coming to the surface, maybe even bubbles. It really depends on how active your yeast is, and it depends on how warm your water was as well. So it's okay. Anything you see happening in the bowl is great. Remember that we are going to let this rise for a nice long time, and a lot of stuff happens in the rising process. So here we go. We've created the environment for rising. We have the soul, we have the sweetness, we have the warmth, and we know that the soul is in a partnership because the soul on its own could not connect in the way it does, could not reach out to another person, could not do a mitzvah, and all the beautiful things that we can do in this world. We need a partnership with our body. The flour represents the body. Flour represents the physical universe in the way that it's in pieces and crumbs, and the dryness. Our sages compare it to the physical universe, to gashmiut, to physicality, and particularly the body. And of course, flour on its own without water would not nourish us. It needs to be combined. Water on its own cannot feed us. So water and flour together create this recipe for life, body and soul. Our sages tell us, im ein kemach, ein Torah. If there's no flour, there's no Torah. What does this mean? If we don't have our physical health, if our bodies are not functioning properly, we cannot hope for our souls to express themselves. We cannot hope to be in a higher, more expansive awareness. And we all know what I'm talking about, right? When you're hangry or cranky or need a nap or have a backache or a headache, you know, we all know the list. We've been around the block. And we just know that in that state, we're not our best selves. We are not our kindest, most giving, open, expansive selves. We become constricted. We become really worried about our own self. We become very closed off. In order to be expansive, to be transcendent beings, to really connect to something higher than ourselves, our body needs to be functioning properly. So when we take care of our body and the bodies of our loved ones, we're not just nourishing the physical, we're allowing the spirit to shine through. So when we put in the flower, we really think about how are we taking care of ourselves, as your Rebbetzin Basi mentioned, which is such an important thing, as the givers in creation, as the nurturers and the feeders, we have to make sure that we are fed. And it's such an important lesson of Challah, because if you make a small batch, you don't take off a piece to make the blessing because you don't have enough to give away. And that's really it's really a lesson to ourselves that if we want to have enough to give, we have to keep replenishing our bowl. We have to make sure that we have what to give. And I'm not just talking about, you know, the manicure, which is great, the massage, which is essential, but I'm talking about the ways that we nourish ourselves so that we stay connected, we stay inspired and creative and expansive. And if that means going for a run, that means feeding ourselves, taking the moment to feed ourselves something healthy, that allows us to be better people, to be more giving. So don't forget to take care of your body, to take care of those who we love. And as we put in the flower, we think about that. Now, here's an important caveat, everyone. All right, you're not putting in all the flour at once. Very important, okay? Physicality is good, but we want to add it in only as necessary. We want the spirit to still shine through. We want to still have that liquid in your bowl. We are still going to add some liquid ingredients. So we want the dough to be more like a thick batter at this point. We don't want it to be dry yet. So if you're doing the 5-pound bag, I invite you to put in about half the bag. So if you're the style baker who likes to just eyeball things, go ahead and sort of put in half the bag. If you like to be precise, and we have many different styles of nurturers here, go ahead and measure out 6 cups, okay? It's a little less than half your bag, but it'll be just enough to thicken your batter and get it started. So you're gonna put in about half now. If you're making the smaller batch, you wanna put in about 2 cups of flour now, scant cups, okay? 2 scant cups of flour. There you go. We have a very avid baker there in her pink overalls, or is that pink apron? And she is very enthusiastic. Okay, amazing. Is she going to get a mixing? Okay, so half the flour now. Now I'm using, full disclosure, I'm actually baking mine now with spelt. My family prefers spelt. It is almost the same recipe. I have the recipe in my cookbook. The only difference is there's a little bit less water and a few more eggs. But if you're using wheat flour, which I'm assuming most of you are using, any wheat all-purpose flour is great. It does not have to be high gluten, bread flour, any of those things. If you have high gluten or bread flour, great, go for it. But all-purpose flour works great for challah. So you can use all-purpose, and if you want to know which brand I prefer, I really like the King Arthur brand. I don't know what you have in California, but I'm assuming you have that. So the King Arthur all-purpose is great, but really any brand of all-purpose flour will do here. Now I'm going to go put on my apron before we start making a mess. Okay. Hi, everyone. Okay, here we go. So sometimes I forget, and I end up like that first time that I made the challahs in Kobe, Japan, and I was literally covered head to toe in gook. I still get like that if I forget the apron. Okay. All right, ladies. Get your engine started. Are you ready? We have a little bit of flour in the bowl, and we're going to stir it up using a good hard spoon. You can use a wooden spoon. You can use a salad tosser, works great. A flat kind of ladle like this, but you just want something that's hard and not too bendy. Okay, now you're gonna mix it up, and you might notice already that you have some bubbling. There are some bubbles happening. This is already alive. This is already, something is already happening in this bowl. We are creating something that is not just gonna feed, but it is already alive in the bowl. Okay, so it should still be really sticky, a thick batter. And let's see, everybody has that going on? Oh, good, I like that we're seeing everybody on the screen. Is everyone getting that same view? This is fun. Get to see everybody mixing up. See a lot of action happening here. Oh, very nice. Okay, oh my goodness. I feel like we need a soundtrack right now to like all the mixing happening, right? Like we need to be mixing to a soundtrack here. Okay, don't worry too much about how much you're mixing it. Just as long as it sort of combines. It's really an amazing thing about challah. And I've done challah workshops with over 2,000 women in the same room. And everybody is using the exact same pre-measured ingredients and mostly following my instruction. And at the end of the evening, I'll walk around the room and no two doughs are the same. It's really incredible to see. And when I point it out, everyone goes crazy. Like, it's true. How crazy is that? We all did the same thing. How is it possible that no two doughs are alike? Because really, what's incredible about challah is we're putting ourselves into it. And the challah is a reflection of that. So that's why it's a great way to check in with ourselves. So I've gotten phone calls. I'm on Instagram, by the way, ladies, at Rachi Pinson. And you're welcome to DM me any of your challah questions. No challah question is too small. Trust me, I've gotten them all at this point, pretty much. But you can surprise me, who knows? So I've had someone write me, oh, I don't know why my dough is so tough and unyielding and it's stiff, I can't work with it. And well, I happen to know this person. And I said to her, I'm like, I think I know what's going on here, because this is a person who really needs to control every aspect of her life and her kids' lives and everything that's going on. And you know how she's making her challah? She is mixing and she does not leave that dough alone. Yes, that dough is going to be a little tough. It's going to be a little bit resistant. And then you have the opposite side of the coin. Then you have those like totally lackadaisical challah bakers. You're like, yeah, just maybe I'll put the spoon in a little. It's fine. It'll happen. And then they're concerned because their challah is like maybe a little floppy or doesn't really have structure. And so it's really a great way to check in or to see our nurturing style. And even our own dough is going to be different every single week. So it's really incredible to see. It's a reflection of our mood, of our state of mind, of our emotional state. It's a great way to check in every week. See what's going on in your bowl. It might clue you into what's going on, in other places. So it really is a reflection, and it is a recipe for how we nurture. And of course, nurturing begins with ourselves, because if that's not happening well, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. So we got to make sure, let's give a little attention to what's going on here, some mindfulness, and clue ourselves into what's going on with us. So it's liquidy still. We're going to add in the rest of the liquids now. So what are we adding? This is not just a regular bread, which would just basically be flour, water, salt, yeast. you're done. We're making a challah, we're making an enriched bread that's supposed to beautify our Shabbat, make it special. So we're going to add in 2 ingredients now, the eggs and the oil. So I'm making a large batch of spelt. So I'm using 4 eggs. If you're using wheat flour, I suggest you use 2 eggs. You only need 2 eggs. If you're making the quarter recipe, you only need to put in 1 egg. All right. So if you're making the
Excuse me, do you use the white as well? Are you using the whites as well or just the yolk?
the whole egg. Now, just a note about the eggs, okay? First of all, when you crack the eggs, you want to check it for blood because blood is not kosher. And really, this serves to remind us that this ingredient is not just another ingredient. It's really a gift of life. It's an embryonic form of life, and we don't want to take that for granted. So we look for the blood. We remember this ingredient and how special it is and that it's a gift to us before we put it in. And eggs are amazing. Anybody here bakes? Anybody's a baker? Anybody like?
Buffy, can I interrupt you with 2 more questions?
Yes, totally.
Thank you. Okay, so Pearl wants to know, she wants to do raisins in her challah for a sweet new year. Is
Yes.
there a specific time she needs to put that in?
That's a great question. Now's a good time.
Okay,
After dough is still liquidy, this would be the best time to put in all your add-ins. I'm actually going to talk about that when we finish the eggs and the oil.
okay. And one more question. If someone's doing the full 5-pound recipe of regular flour, how many eggs are they using?
2 large eggs. If you feel like you're working with smallish eggs, you could do 3. But if they're large or extra large, 2 will suffice. Okay, so all right, any more questions, I'm happy to take them. And hopefully I'll answer most of them as we go along. So eggs are a really important ingredient in baking. For anyone who's a baker, they know that eggs are the binders. Eggs bring everything together. When you heat up eggs, like they just bump, all those molecules are just bumping into each other, wanting to make connections. Eggs are really about connecting. And so when we put in the eggs, we think about that. We think about how connected we really all are. And maybe we're all in our own kitchens right now, and everybody has a different background, but we have so much more that is similar than what divides us. There is so much more that unites us than what divides us. And sometimes we look around and we see the people who are more nurturing, or, and everybody is like, where do they come from? Really just remembering how much we have in common with all of humanity, with us, the family of Jewish people and community, and how much we really share. And that really reminds us in our nurturing of the connections that are already there and encourages us to build on those connections. And then of course we put in the oil. So if you're doing the full recipe, you're going to put in 1 cup. I suggest for this one, like a flavorless oil such as canola. If you like grapeseed, that's an option. There are many oils you can use. You can use olive oil. You can really use any oil you like. For this particular sweet recipe, I like to use an oil like canola because it doesn't add flavor. It just adds the richness. So, we were talking about eggs and how they bring everything together. Oil is exactly the opposite. So how when you put oil in anything, it just wants to stay on top, right? It just wants to stay separate. So, by the way, if you're doing the quarter recipe, the 2 challah, you want to do 2 tablespoons of oil, okay? 2 tablespoons. Oil always wants to stay distinct. But the amazing thing about oil is even as it stays distinct or it struggles to keep its distinctiveness, it enriches everything that it comes in contact with. And really that is about celebrating. When we put in the oil, we really think about celebrating our uniqueness, or the uniqueness in the ones whom we nurture, and how those things, maybe it's the very thing that drives us the most crazy, is really the thing that makes them and makes us so eccentric, unique, special. And if we don't celebrate that, we are denying the world the enrichment that comes from us being truly who we are. And especially now as we go into Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, as we're entering into Yom Kippur, and we really, what is our goal right now? And it really is to realign ourselves, to remember, that we are our body and our soul, and are we expressing our true selves? Are we living in a way that's aligned with our essence? And are we being true to ourselves so that we can really shine and we can influence and bring light into the world and enrich the world around us? So remembering that, the Jewish people are compared to olive oil because, like oil, we always remain distinct. We keep our distinctiveness, but at the same time, we enrich the world around us. So when we put in the oil, we think about that, how by maintaining our uniqueness and celebrating that in others, we actually make the world a more beautiful and richer place. So we have our liquids in, and I'm going to add in one more ingredient. Somebody asked about raisins. This is the time for you to put in any flavor that is yours. So my flavor, and I highly suggest if you haven't tried this yet, try it out today. You can always do another flavor another time. It's vanilla. Some people think this is sacrilegious to put vanilla into challah. Try it once, and I'll convert you over to my side. Vanilla in challah is incredible. I have a brother-in-law who swears that my challah is dairy, and he keeps threatening that he's going to install a camera in my kitchen because he's going to watch me sneaking the butter in there. But this is the secret, ladies. It's the vanilla. So if you're making the whole recipe, 2 teaspoons of vanilla. If you're making the smaller recipe, go ahead and put in 1/4 or 1/2 teaspoon, as strong as you like it. This is the time. If you, excuse me, if you're not such a vanilla gal, go ahead. This is the time to put in anything you like. If it's herbs, savories, seeds, nuts, whatever you want in your challah, this is the time to add it. Raisins are very traditional this time of year because we really just want to sprinkle in more and more and more sweetness to influence our coming year. We need all the sweetness we can get. So if that is raisins for you, go for it. My family will not touch raisins, but I treat them with chocolate chips in my challah every Rosh Hashanah. The only time of the year I cave in and do that, but that's how we get our sweetness. So whatever speaks to you, this is the time to put it in. And this ingredient really is about putting our own unique flavor into it. So even though we all have the same recipe for nurturing and it looks like we're all doing the same thing, really each one of us is going to do it in our own unique way. And the products of our nurturing are going to be a beautiful reflection of our unique flavor that we put into it. So right now you should have something that's kind of soupy and goopy and not quite looking like a challah dough yet. That's good. Okay, it could be a little thicker, a little bit watery, more watery, it doesn't matter. It's all good. Okay, and now we're going to finish this dough.
Excuse me, did we put salt? Salt.
Very good question. Now is the time for the salt. So the salt is a really crucial ingredient, but it's also a dangerous ingredient. In Kabbalistic teachings, salt is compared to gevura. So whereas the sugar would be chesed, sweetness, the desire to give and sweeten, gevura is restraint. It's holding back. It's, okay, kosher salt or table salt. Sea salt. Sea salt is the best. Fine sea salt, not the kosher salt. You could use the kosher salt, but yes, sea salt is the way to go. If you only have table salt, that's also fine. So salt is compared to gevura. Salt is a really interesting ingredient. If you've ever by mistake put salt in your coffee or eaten a spoon of salt on its own, you will know salt is very harsh. It is very bitter. It's actually, you know, salt comes from, it's melach, right? And the word melach is milach, from liquid. And really that's where salt comes from. The sun dries out the liquid and we're left with the salt. So salt really is the absence of the life-giving water. So salt on its own can actually be quite harsh. It can be bitter. And not only that, salt has the ability to break things down. So it can even be destructive. We know when it comes to yeast, sugar encourages the growth of yeast. I'm sorry, ladies, I don't want to get too technical, but we all know what I'm talking about. And salt inhibits the growth of yeast. So a lot of times you'll taste homemade challah and it'll be a little bland because the bakers are scared of the salt. They know this rule. The sugar will make the yeast go crazy and the salt inhibits it. But I want to tell you something really important about the salt. The salt is not just for flavor. It actually is a crucial ingredient in this recipe. Salt representing gevura. It is so essential, but it's really all about the measurement and the timing. So there's a really beautiful parable that the previous Chabad Rebbe used to tell, this sort of a parable about gevura, about discipline, and this idea of rules and boundaries. And so there's this one guy, and let's call him Sam, and he's walking down the street and he meets his friend Michael, and Michael's holding a bundle of sticks and he starts beating Sam. So we all know that story doesn't end well. Sam is not happy. Sam is beaten. Sam goes home. Okay. Then there's the other part of the parable. So same guy, Sam, but this time he's having a better day. He goes to the spa and he goes into the schwitz. If anyone knows, you know, like the Russian baths, and you go into the steam room, then he goes into the next room where he gets massaged for the better part of an hour. At the end, he goes finally into the treatment room, and Michael is standing there with a bundle of twigs, and he starts beating him. And Sam says, in Yiddish, amachaya, this is life-giving, right? Like, oh, that's amazing. It's the same bundle of twigs. He's getting the same beating. It's all about the warming up, the being in the right time and the right place. And really, Judaism is so cognizant of this in nurturing that we do not introduce discipline and rules when it's too early. You know, a child, we don't cut their hair until they're 3 because we just let them be. They can be, you know, wild jungle children till they're 3 years old. We don't try to shape them or form them or label them or try to make them be something. That comes at age 3. Even like the fruit of the trees, and trees are compared to men. We are not allowed to pick a fruit or to prune a tree for the first 3 years. It's really all about this idea that in the beginning of life, when we're starting this recipe for life, we need to infuse it with as much sweetness and warmth and kindness as possible. The rules are so important. The boundaries, the order is so crucial, but it has to come in the right measure and at the right time. And this is the beauty of salt, because when it's added into an existing framework of sweetness, not only is it not bitter, but it draws out the sweetness that's already there and makes it even sweeter. Think about putting salt on a chocolate chip cookie, right? Just a touch. You just make it that much better. And salt really does that. When it's added at the right time, in the right proportion, it just draws out the beauty and the sweetness that's already there. So in our own discipline, we think about that. The way we're disciplining ourselves and our loved ones, it's a pound of sugar, an ounce of salt. Start with the sugar, then put in the salt. And that's really, really important. Not only does it add flavor, but it preserves the bread. So it's not only not destructive, but actually when it's added in the right measure and the right time, it's a preservative. Your challah will stay fresh longer. and it will have more flavor, and it also controls the rising. So, you know, like on Pesach, when we don't eat leavened foods, because it represents ego, and a certain amount of over-rising is actually problematic. That's inflammation. That's already, you know, that's already a problem. So what we're trying to create here is a really healthy, controlled rising. So when we add in the salt, we're really adding structure to the dough and making sure that our dough is rising in a controlled and healthy way. So,
Achi, is
Yeah.
it for 2 loaves? Is it 1 tablespoon of salt? How
so
much salt for 2 loaves?
2 loaves, it is actually 2 teaspoons of
2
salt.
teaspoons. Okay. And then we're still waiting on the rest of the flour.
But they can keep it. And we're still going to add the rest of the flour right after this. So now we're putting in the salt. It's 2.5 for the full recipe. The 5-pound bag, it's 2.5 tablespoons of salt. A lot of people are like, whoa, that's much more salt than I've ever. Try it. It makes a huge difference. It's a big part of what makes this recipe so good. 2.5 heaping tablespoons. Don't be shy. Your dough can handle it now. It wants it. It's going to shine. We have the salt in, and now we're going to start adding the rest of the flour, but not all at once. With every one of my recipes, I give you approximate amounts. Let's say 14 to 16 cups or 2 to 4 cups, depending on, because every time you make challah, every bag of flour you open, whichever climate you're in, whatever season you're in, it will all affect how much flour you need to use. So never go and dump in all the flour. Always leave some in your bag and add it only as necessary. Don't be afraid of a sticky dough. This is really important. People, they want things to be, you know, really well-rounded and neat and clean and fit into the box the right way, but life is not like that. Life is messy and life is sticky and it doesn't have any clean edges. So what we're making in our bowl right now is a reflection of that. So don't worry about it looking like a perfect round ball of dough in a picture. It could be craggy and it could be sticky. That's good. You can always add in flour later. You can't take it out. So if you want to make sure that you do not have a flavorless, dry challah, err on the side of sticky, okay? You can always add more flour later. So now is when I get my hands in there. We're going to put our hands in there and put together all these ingredients. So first what we're going to do is simply mix it. You can use your spoon until it gets too thick. And then you're going to get your hands in there because nothing does this job as well as hands. I see that Wendy has a KitchenAid, which is awesome. KitchenAids are great. They don't work very well with a full 5-pound bag of flour. So I'm just warning you that you may want to turn it out on your counter and knead it by hand. There are a few machines that can handle it. I love dough that is kneaded by hand, although I do use a machine on occasion. It's not a cheat. Whatever makes it work for us. I'm not a purist about this. So if it's your hands, if it's a mixer, just be careful. If you are making your dough in a mixer, you do not want to over knead it. So if you're using your hands, you won't over knead it, no matter what, unless, I don't know, you're like a wrestler or something. You probably won't over knead your dough. If you are using a machine, don't knead it for too long, just a few minutes, because it's very powerful. It heats up the inside of the dough. The internal temperature of the dough gets very, very hot, and it could toughen the dough or sort of even burn it. So you don't want to go for too long. So I'm going to show you another little trick right now. It's called a stool. I did not magically grow. I use a kitchen stool, or I take my bowl to the kitchen table. Tables are always a little lower than counters. So if you're kneading up on your counter, your arms are going to be up here, which is going to make it harder. Gravity, ladies, is your friend when it comes to kneading at least. So let it work it to your advantage. So either step up on a stool or move your bowl to a slightly lower surface. So then you can really get your whole self in there. It'll make the whole kneading process so much easier. So here we go. I have grown feet in the hour we've been together, and I am working the dough. Now, as soon as it becomes workable enough that it's not completely sticking to the sides of the bowl, I'm going to remove it from my bowl and put it on the counter so you can see. Now, if you have a big bowl, you don't actually have to do this step. You can knead it inside the bowl and keep your kitchen clean, which I do with my huge bowl. But because I really want to show you some of the kneading technique, I'm gonna get my counter dirty just for you tonight. So devoted. Okay, here we go. So get all those bits out. You're gonna turn it out onto your surface, and I'm gonna show you a little bit of kneading technique. So kneading is not just, it's not just about mixing the ingredients together and combining them. What you're doing when you knead is you're actually stretching out the gluten strands and creating an elasticity in your dough. You're making your dough resilient and able to handle the heat of the oven so that it doesn't explode in the oven, and also so that it gets that really nice crumb, which is like baker's speak for the interior of your bread. So you're gonna get that really nice interior, and it's gonna have that elasticity that you need the gluten for. So what we're doing is we're stretching out the gluten strand. So here I have a little handy tool that is called the bench scraper. You could get it on Amazon or anywhere. And it's great for kneading because it helps you to scrape that off your work surface so that you end up needing less flour. But add flour as needed. And I know I'm saying the word needed a lot and it's confusing. Am I kneading or kneading? But hopefully you guys all figure this out. Okay, so you sprinkle flour on your counter and you're going to bring it in towards yourself, turn it a little bit, bring it towards yourself, stretch it out. Towards yourself and stretch it out. So that's what we're just gonna keep doing. Towards yourself, stretch it. And we're really creating a nice elastic dough. So how do you know when your dough is ready? That's a question I'm always getting. So first of all, like I said, I want to demystify this. There's not this like one magical moment and, ooh, you better catch it right then, or, you know, you're over kneading or under kneading. It's fine. You can't really hurt this dough, I promise you. So general guidelines is when the dough holds together, when you lift it. So mine is not totally done yet, but when your dough holds together when you lift it and doesn't sort of spill over the edges. Another thing you want to do is poke your finger in it a little and see if it fills back in. That will test the bounciness, the elasticity of your dough. So you want it to have a little bit of a bounce to it. Not that it's you don't want it to be a rubber ball that's going to bounce on the floor if you throw it or drop it, but you just want it to fill in at least halfway when you poke your finger in.
Rafi,
yeah.
question again, for the smaller amount, how much flour are we adding right now?
So add another cup, maximum another cup and a half, but you shouldn't need more than that.
Thank you.
Okay. So just a note, if you ever want to make spelt is actually easier to digest than wheat flour for many people. It has a lower gluten content and it needs less kneading. So you can actually over knead the spelt. You shouldn't knead it too much. The white wheat flour takes a little longer to get it properly kneaded, but the spelt ends up done pretty quickly, and mine is done. So why don't we do a little thing here where, Cranny, I don't know who's controlling, but can we see everybody's dough? And
I'm
see-
controlling. I think I have it on gallery view now. Can everybody see each
there we
other?
go, Wendy, that looks awesome. There we go. We have a dough. Who else? Oh, beautiful, Jody. And what's your name? What's the girl in the pink apron? Can we get your name?
She's on her way.
Ella. Ella.
Ella, you are a very enthusiastic baker. I love it.
It's like pumpkin spices and stuff, so that's why it's orange.
Oh, that's a great idea. That's actually, so I have a challah for every holiday in my cookbook. And for Sukkot, I actually did a pumpkin challah because it's the time of the harvest and fall, of course, when everything is pumpkin. So pumpkin challah is a great idea. You can actually, my pumpkin recipe actually uses a whole thing of pumpkin dough. Oh, I like that, Pearl. There's a raisin challah happening there. Beautiful. Beautiful. That looks really good. I forgot to take off my rings. That's not good. Okay.
Can you over knead it, or should you stop at some point?
Yeah, if you're kneading by hand, you're not going to over knead it. But if it feels like it's holding together, you know, you feel like it's holding together and you poke your finger in it and it kind of comes back and you see something else, that's fine. Remember that most of what you need to happen is going to happen in the rising process. You know, bakers, often they don't even knead their dough at all. They call it autolyze, which means they just basically leave it alone and let everything happen in the rising process. And Deanie, your kids are adorable. I can't. Okay. This is a real treat for me. And this is really an important thing to note about making challah. You know, we've put in all the ingredients, we put in all our effort. Challah really is about reminding us that there's something larger than us in this world, and there's a source to our blessings. And now is the time when we finish kneading our dough and we put it aside to rise. It's really the time of faith. It's a time where we say we've done what we can, we've put in the ingredients, we've done the work, and now we put it on the side. In terms of nurturing, I compare this to nurturing teenagers, adolescents. So you know, it's a lot less hands-on, but it's like watchful waiting. You're not totally out of the picture. You know, you're not going to disappear for 12 hours if your dough is on the counter, but you just keep a watchful eye from a distance and let it do its thing. And you have to trust that you put in the right ingredients, you did the work, and it will rise. And it does. It does. You let time and you let God do their thing, and your challah will rise. So here's what we're going to do now. You're going to take your dough and put it back in the bowl that we used to mix. And don't worry if the bowl is a little dirty, it's fine. You're going to put some oil into your bowl, just a little bit. And then you're going to roll your dough in that oil so that it's coated in the oil. That way, when it rises, it won't dry out the surface. And now you're going to cover your bowl either with saran wrap, which works great. Ooh, I love that dough. Ella, that looks amazing. And I like that orangey color too. And saran wrap works because it makes a nice little humid environment. Yeah, that looks good. I can't see. Oh, Ezra. I don't think you're Ezra, but we have an Ezra there. Another option for covering it is using a wet dish towel. A dry dish towel, the dough might stick to it, so you want to wet it and wring it out so it's just slightly damp. Cover your bowl with that. If you want to speed up the rising process and get it kick-started, you can actually make your dish towel wet with really hot water, wring it out, put it on top, and then you're going to create like a little steamy sauna for your dough. So even if you can't get to the spa these days, you know, at least your challah can have some fun. So we want to create a nice little humid environment where there's still the influence of moisture, right? We still need that soul in there. And put it in a warm place to rise, wherever is warm in your kitchen. So if there's AC blowing, don't put it right near the AC. Put it in a warm spot. And it's going to rise for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, or till it about doubles in size. So I'm now going to give you a little note about time, okay? So everybody, let's do the calculations. I know that you're 3 hours earlier than me, so you're already off to a good start. However, we're gonna do a little math now, which I am very bad at, so I'll let you guys do the math. It's gonna take about an hour and a half to 2 hours to rise. Then you're going to shape it, braid it, then allow it to rise for another half hour to an hour before baking it for about a half hour. So do the math. If that ends up way past your bedtime, I'm going to give you some suggestions. So either you're going to make it a late night tonight and get this done, or here's a few options. After you've let it rise, you could punch it down, let out some of that, let out that air, and divide it up, put it in Ziploc bags with a little oil in the bag so it doesn't stick, and put it in the freezer. That's one option. Your dough will be safe in the freezer for as long as you want. It could be in there for a few months, even if you have a good cold freezer. And when you're ready to bake your challah, you will take it out, maybe even overnight. You could take it out and let it completely defrost, rise again, and then you can work with it. That's one option. Second option is take the challah dough as is in the bowl and stick it in the fridge. You can leave it in the fridge to rise slowly for about 24 hours. So you can get to it whenever you get to it. It will rise a little slower, but it will rise completely in the fridge. It's actually really good to rise it that way. It's like the slow rise really develops the flavors. And when you do take out your dough to work with, you don't have to wait for it to reach room temperature. You can just start working with the cold dough right away. Then after you've braided it, make sure it really rises nicely, gets to room temperature and rises, puffs up for at least about 45 minutes to an hour before you put it in the oven to bake. Okay, so there you have your options. Stay up late tonight, get it done, stick it in the freezer and think about it in a month, or put it in the fridge and deal with it tomorrow. So those are your options. Choose your adventure and get that dough covered up and put away, and we're going to move on.
So some questions in the chat are, if the bowl has a lid, is it okay for there to be space between the challah and the lid? Would you recommend plastic directly on top of the dough?
Yeah, if you're putting plastic, you don't put it directly on top of the dough either. You want to give the dough a lot of room to grow. So don't confine it. Put the plastic so you can create a humid environment. If you have a lid, great. Yeah, that'll work. You might find that the lid will even pop off from the strength of the rising. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's very powerful when it's rising. And if you put it in your fridge to rise, it may be everywhere. So make sure your fridge is clean and there's nothing around, because that can really, really rise out of your bowl.
Okay, next question is, so she wants to recap that you rise for 90 minutes, punch it down and rise again another hour, then put it in the freezer overnight?
No. Okay, if you're gonna put it in the, okay, so fridge or freezer? We're talking about freezer? Freezer. Okay, here's the thing. If you're gonna freeze it, it has to rise once first before you freeze it. Just think about that when you put it in such a cold environment, it completely retards the growth. So it has to at least rise once before you put it in the freezer. So you're gonna let it rise for about an hour and a half. Then take out the air, because you don't want those air bubbles in the freezer. It's gonna degrade the dough. So take out the air that's built up and then freeze your dough. If you're putting it in the fridge, you don't have to do any of that. Just take it as it is right now, cover your bowl and stick it in the fridge. I hope that's clear.
Did that clarify? I think so.
Okay.
Without punching it down just once even before you put it in the fridge?
No, not necessary.
Okay, thanks.
Now, if you've let it rise before you put it in the fridge, if it's been rising for an hour or so, then yes, let out some air before you put it in. But if you're just putting it right now directly in the fridge, you don't have to do it. Okay?
If
So-
I cook it tonight, how long do I let it sit?
If you're baking it tonight,
Mhm.
you're gonna let it sit about an hour and a half now,
Okay.
and then you can braid it. But then you have to let it rise again before you put it in the oven after it's shaped.
How long is that after I braid it?
Half hour to an hour.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Depends how warm
so
it is.
Rahi, we've got just one or two more follow-up questions to make sure that everybody is clear. So they just want you to recap once more if you're putting it in the fridge and if you're just finishing it off now. If you could repeat that one more time.
If you're putting it in the fridge, just stick it in the fridge. That's it. Cover it.
In the fridge?
Put it in the fridge. It can be in there for at least 24 hours. Okay. Try not much longer than 24 hours, but definitely 24 hours. And when you take it out of the fridge to work with it, you can work with it right away. You don't have to let it come to room temperature. That's fridge. If you want to work with it tonight, leave it out. Don't put it in the fridge. Let it rise for about an hour and a half.
Hour and a half.
Okay. That makes sense?
And just to be clear, none of the covering should touch the dough, right? Whether it's a damp towel, saran wrap.
I mean, nothing's going to happen if it does touch the dough, but you want to give the dough room to grow.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
All right.
And is it too late to refrigerate and then bake Friday morning? That's a little too long, isn't that?
Tonight is
Wednesday night.
Wednesday night. I would say Thursday night. Make it Thursday night.
All right, I think we got it clear now.
Or you can freeze it overnight and take it out tomorrow and let it rise on your counter for a while. Okay? Are we good? I'm going to go wash my hands and then we're going to start the next part of our evening. We're going to do the lesson on the dough and I'm going to give you a little braiding demonstration. We'll have some fun with our dough. All right, everyone. So let's put our doughs away and wash your hands if that's necessary, and I'll meet you back here in a moment.
Okay. Didn't get my question answered, but whatever. My challah comes out good. Ariel and Josh already asked if we'd save some for them.
Valerie, what was your question that you didn't get answered?
Valerie, it looks like you asked whether you can over knead the bread. I think that
Yeah,
she
what if
said,
you need it for too long? What happens to it?
if you're doing it by hand, it sounds like it's not really possible to over knead it. The concern comes more when you're doing it in the mixer and it heats up the inside of the dough as well.
Okay.
Now we answered you?
Yes.
Good.
Okay, I have a question. It's probably in the book. So if you don't use the packaged yeast, you can make a sourdough challah. Did you ever make a sourdough challah? If you let it ferment and you use the sourdough starter?
I have not. I have a sister who's a master at that, but it's completely a different animal altogether.
I've been home for 6 months, so I've been making a lot of bread, and I have 2 sourdough starters, and I was going to try to make a sourdough challah.
Yeah, you can definitely do it. She does a great job of it. I'll let her pipe in.
Take 2 ingredients I've never done before.
Are you a sister who makes sourdough?
Yes, I'm going to spotlight her for all of you to see because she's just adorable. Hi, this is my challah sister, my sourdough sister.
Hi. So I make sourdough bread. It's not challah. I'm sure Rahi can elaborate how you can take sourdough starter and make it into a challah. Mine's just flour, water, and salt.
Yeah.
So it's more of a bread. Rahi, I'd love to know if we can make an actual challah with that.
Yeah. So I have a very basic, like a rustic loaf like that in my book, which is more of a bread. And then I actually have a challah with eggs and oil and sweetness and all of that. The difference is when you're working with sourdough, as you know, it is a very wet dough, and it's not as elastic as a regular challah dough. You can't really do fancy braiding techniques with it. So if you do want like a braided challah, you can do it. You could do a basic braid with the sourdough. It's going to be much floppier, and with sourdough, you really want to give it a lot of time. So even if you do make a shape, it might lose its shape. So for sourdough, I recommend using like a loaf-shaped pan. They have like the oval loaf-shaped pans, which make it look more like a classic challah. And then like, even though it's sourdough and the texture is a little different, it'll look more like a challah if you do it in that. But yeah.
Let's try it. Thank you.
All right. Okay, everyone. So this is really, is everybody joined? Did everyone join us back here again? I'm just gonna get this angle right here. Is everybody back here with us? So, ready for a little challah magic? Here we go. Woo, what happened? Okay, so I don't have magical rising dough. This is, you know that cooking show trick where they, make a pie and then they go and open the oven and whoop, it's done. Okay, so that's kind of what I did here. I have this ready from before. And this is a full 5-pound bag, and it is risen. And it's generally, we wait until it's risen before we make the blessing. But you could do the blessing on the dough before it's risen as well. So if you've made a full 5-pound bag, now's the time to have your dough in front of you. And we'll just talk for a moment about what we're doing here. Reshit harisasechem tarimu challah, the beginning of your dough, you take off a piece, and that is where the word challah comes from. That little piece which we take off was given as a gift to the priests in the temple, and that is called challah. That gift, that truma, was called challah. Now, as we were about to enter into the land of Israel, we received so many of these different mitzvot, these different directives, how we would stay connected in the land, even as we became, warriors and involved in agriculture and all those things. How are we going to stay connected to the source of our blessings? And these trumot, these gifts, were ways for us to stay connected. But many of them were bound to temple times and to the land of Israel, but not the mitzvah of challah. Challah, we are told, is for future generations as well. And wherever you are in the world, whether you're in the land of Israel or outside the land of Israel, and whether in temple times or not, this truma endures. This mitzvah of taking off the piece of challah endures. And it is a reminder to us, wherever we are, it transcends time, it transcends space, is a reminder to us that we are not merely particles of matter, that we are at our essence a soul. If we were simply matter, we would not take of our own nourishment and sustenance and take off a piece for something higher. The fact that we are taking off a piece of our very own nourishment and that which is meant to feed our family is a sign that we recognize that at our essence, we are transcendent, infinite beings. And as such, we are connected to transcendence. We are connected to the infinite source of blessings. We have access to that. We are that at our essence. We are divine, we are light, we have the connection to reach into that source of blessings. When we make the bracha, we say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, and with each word, we bring closer from the source down into our physical universe. We draw down from Baruch, from the Brecha, the reservoir of all blessings and all possibility before it even takes form. And we finally bring it into the dough, into our kitchen, into our home, and we make our home an elevated place. As the women, we are the Akeret HaBayit, we are the foundation of the home, which means we are building something from the ground up. And as we know, if anyone's ever built anything, It doesn't matter, what tiles you pick for the kitchen or what shingles are on your roof. If the foundation is not poured properly, one wind will come and the whole thing will topple over. We are trying to build something that will endure for generations, that will last in all the storms of this world. And the way we do that is by pouring a foundation that is solid, that is connected to something that is eternal. Our homes are our temples, our Shabbat tables are our altars, and the challah that we place upon it is our offering. The Ben Ish Chai used to say that when a woman puts her challah on the Shabbat table, she should say, Zeh hashulchan asher lifnei Hashem. This is the table that is before God. I'm placing my offering upon it. So our challah is really our expression of how we bring godliness and awareness into our home, into our lives. The kitchen is the center of the home. And for anybody that's been in quarantine or lockdown for months, we know it's true. You can always find the other people in your house if you go to the kitchen. The kitchen really is the center of the house, and it's the heart of the home. And what happens here spreads outward, not just into the rest of our home, but out into the world. When we build a healthy home, a transcendent, spirit-filled home, that spreads light to the rest of the world. It creates a healthy society and a healthy world, which is what we need right now. Challah is known as the bread of healing. As we take this piece off, we are not diminishing or making this less whole, but we are in fact making it whole and holy by taking off that piece. And that's a really important thing to remember, that sometimes when we give of ourselves, that's where we find our healing and our wholeness. Sometimes we think we don't have enough, and that's what the problem is, but just give a little bit more and you'll find that you'll become more whole, you'll become a better person, and you'll become happier through your giving. When we take off the challah, that piece of dough, our entire dough becomes whole and holy and blessed. Because challah is the bread of healing, when we make the blessing on the challah dough, we are actually empowered to bring a lot of healing and wholeness into this world. And I think the world is in need of a lot of healing right now, physical, spiritual, a lot of different elements where we really need to draw down some light into this world. So never is it more powerful than when women come together unified. We say, bless us our Father, we are all one. When we are a unified vessel, the blessing sticks, it can hold. So we bring down the Shekhinah, we bring down the divine presence in a place of unified intention. So right now, when we're all unified together, praying for healing and for more light in the world, this is a time when we have great, great power and potential. So let's all take a moment to slow down. Life is quick and everything moves fast. We want to take a moment and slow down and go inward just for a moment as we make the blessing. If you're saying the blessing on your dough now, if you've made a full dough, please feel free to say it with me. If you haven't made a dough at all or just made a small one, then just please have intention while I'm saying the blessing. And when you answer Amen, you then become a part of that blessing. So, of course, praying for another person is always the most powerful thing we can do. So let's hold in our hearts, maybe an individual person whom we know needs something in their lives for completion or for healing, whether it's physical healing, mental healing, maybe to find their soulmate or to have a child, or parnasa, to have more sustenance in their lives and abundance. Whatever they are feeling the lack, let's hold them in our hearts, in our minds, as we say the blessing. And we're going to create some miracles together here. This is a time in the 10 days of Tshuva between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur that our job is really to connect, to reconnect. That's all we have to do right now, just to become closer and find our connection. So let's pray for ourselves as well, that we should live in that place of connectedness and wholeness. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Kiddushanu v'mitzvosav v'tzivanu lahafrish challah. Amen. I hold the dough in my hand and I say, Hare zu challah. Behold, this is challah. As mentioned before, our speech has so much power. We create, we can build with our speech. We have to be so careful. On Yom Kippur, God says the words for the very first time, Salachti kidvarecha. I have forgiven you as you have asked with your words. Through our words, we created this whole paradigm of forgiveness in the world, the whole possibility for tshuva, for radical transformation and return. And through our words, we constantly have the power to heal, to build, to create new worlds. So let's remember our power of speech makes this holy. We declare, Harezu challah, behold, this is challah, and now it is challah, it is sacred. We don't eat this piece. We're going to burn it. In the days of the temple, you would give it to the priest, and that was their sustenance. But today we burn it in recognition that we don't have a temple and in recognition that this is not for us to consume. And especially when the world is as crazy as it is and there's so much we don't understand right now. I think the emoji of 2020 is like this one, right? Like, I don't know. I think everyone is just, I don't know. So really, I feel like this piece of challah, which we burn and it's not for us to consume, is really representative of all those things which we don't know. Maybe if we knew, we would be God. We don't have that vision that we see the whole picture. We just have to trust that there is a master, there is a plan, and it's a good plan and we're part of it. So when we burn this piece of dough, we recognize those parts of our lives which are beyond us. Maybe one day we'll see the whole picture. But for now, we burn it. You can burn it on your stovetop, you can burn it in your toaster oven or your oven. The only thing you shouldn't do is burn it in the oven at the same time as you're baking your challah. So because the challah is for us to eat, and this piece is not, we don't want to bake it together. So you could bake it in the same oven, just not at the same time. So you want to burn it to the point where no one wants to eat it, not even a very hungry puppy in your house, and then you can dispose of it. The size of the piece that you take off is not so important. It's more symbolic, but it's about an ounce is the amount that you could take off. I took about a little bit of a larger piece, but you could take about the size of a small egg or a really big olive. That's the size that you take off traditionally. If you make the half bag of flour, which is my half recipe, which makes 4 challah, you take off a piece, but you don't make the blessing. And I have that listed on every one of my recipes in the book. If you make a blessing, if you take off a piece, or if you don't do anything at all. If you made the quarter recipe, which makes 2 challah, you don't take off anything. Keep that all for yourself. You're going to need it. Okay. So now, I bless that all your plans come true, and send me all your miracle stories, because I get amazing stories in my DM every single day, which is really exciting. The amazing miracles and blessings that come into the world through challah baking, and I'm waiting to hear yours. I'm going to put this aside so I don't mix it up. I'm going to come back to my dough. Did you see that? What's going on here? Okay.
Can I share my story?
Yes. Oh.
Okay. So I have made the challah when we had those big gatherings, you know, with ladies, 1,800 people, a lot. I've never made it at home. So for Rosh Hashanah, we were invited to LA, to my family, to my sister. And then I said to myself, I'm going to make it. And it was not just a simple one. I add other flours to it. I put cranberries in it. I put raisins in it. And I sent the picture actually to Bossy because I wanted her to see it.
Yeah.
And there was not left even one little grain of it at the table. They just ate it like food. And I believe that it wasn't me. It was just love that I want to serve my family. And my sister told me, because she bought Rosh Hashanah challah, she said to me, why you didn't tell me? I said, because I didn't dare. I didn't know if it will come out or what will happen.
Right.
And so for me, this was a miracle.
It is. It is. The challah every time is a miracle. Life is a miracle. And challah really is alive. It really is miraculous. And like I said, when you feed people challah, it's not like anything else. They really feel your love that goes into it. And the challah is a reflection of that. Thank you for sharing that with us. That was beautiful. Everybody, what I'm doing right now is I'm dividing up my dough. So has anyone ever told you not to play with your food? Don't listen to them. Play with your food, especially your challah dough. You know what? This is our offering, right? This is our korban. We're putting this on our Shabbos table. This is our offering. So what is an offering? It has to come from deep within yourself. You want to pour your passion, your creativity, your fun side, anything into this challah. Make it yours. And even if you're not particularly gifted in the braiding department, I have so many fun tips and tricks and techniques that you can make a beautiful challah no matter what. So I call it braiding for dummies. I have over 37 different braiding techniques in my book, and they're all step-by-step illustrated and instructions and every level of difficulty. So even if you think you can't, you can. And tonight I'm going to show you some fun things you can do with your challah. The idea of braiding was not always part of the challah tradition. It came along a little later, sort of like in the 1500s in Europe, which really coincided with when the Kabbalistic teaching started to become a little more mainstream. So there's a lot of beautiful significance in the shapes we do, and many traditions have evolved over time. I actually have a section in my cookbook for challahs from around the world, which are different traditions from all different countries and what they serve at the Shabbat table. Most of them are not what we're used to if you're Ashkenazi or grew up with, you know, sweet braided challah. So that's fascinating. But the braiding really evolved practically as a way to be able to rip the challah without using a knife, because many people have the tradition to not put a knife to their challah since it's an offering, and we didn't bring a knife into the temple because it's a weapon. So that evolved from there. And there's also a lot of significance to 6 strands. Now we'll just go quickly into the idea of the round braid, which is traditional for Rosh Hashanah, but also for the whole month of Tishrei. We have the tradition to do the round braids. So first of all, I'm going to show you a really classic, the turban spiral challah, and it has beautiful significance. We're running out of time, so I'm just going to do a few quick things, but I want to show you this classic. This is, you're going to see the dough now instead of me. You've seen enough of me. Let's have some fun with our dough. So I divided up the pieces because when you let the dough relax, it's much easier to work with. It resists less. Always braid on your surface, roll your strands on your surface, not up in the air like this. If you want to get a nice strand, that's the way it's going to happen. I am making a tapered strand, so I'm putting a lot more attention on one end here. So it's tapered. If you notice, it's thicker on one end, thinner on the other end. I'm going to tuck in the wide part and wrap it around. And that is your very classic spiral shape for Rosh Hashanah. Or for any of the holidays. I have the tradition in my family, and many have the tradition to do round throughout the whole month of Tishrei, this whole month of the holiday season. I just unwrapped it to show you another option, which is roll out your strand. And you can use this option really with any braiding technique you're doing. This is a great way to fill your strands. Now, I know some people put raisins in already, but there are many other things you can put in your strands of challah. For Rosh Hashanah, I like to put chopped up apples with all sorts of great spices. You could put in Nutella. This is a version of that. You could put in cinnamon sugar. Anything that you like can go in here. And then you're going to roll it up just like this. And then you'll work with that strand. So either you're going to braid it, or if you're doing the spiral, you simply do that same spiral. This time it's going to be filled with yumminess. Okay, there's your spiral challah. I'll show you a quick, fun trick for a spiral challah, which is super easy, but just looks a little fancier. So you're going to use 2 strands and you're going to roll it. Now, when I want to roll out long strands, what I do is I roll it a little and then I leave it to rest. Then I come back to it and I roll it some more because, like I said, when you let it relax, it does just what you want it to do. So does that sound familiar in our nurturing? Sometimes when you tear at that dough and try to force it, it tightens up and it resists. But if you just leave it alone a little and let it relax, it'll do exactly what you wanted it to do in the first place. So again, our challah dough is kind of just like life. Here's a great trick when you're braiding. Very often people will sprinkle a lot of flour on their strands so the strands don't stick to each other. But then you're going to dry out your dough. And I actually forgot. I'm getting it. Bear with me. Here's a great trick. A little oil spray on your strands. And I never braid without this. You can also just put some oil on your hands and rub them on your strands. Give them a nice little massage. So here we go. We have the 2 strands. And I'm just going to go ahead and twist them. I don't know if you could see what's going on here. There you go. We have a beautiful twisted rope. And now I'll do that same thing with the spiral. I'll tuck in the end and just spiral it around. And look how beautiful that looks. So simple, twisted. And I will show you quickly a braided round challah now, which is a beautiful way to combine the braiding tradition with the round tradition. You get a gorgeous challah and not that much effort. So we like that, right? Easy peasy. And just take another minute here. And if anybody has any requests or you want to see something in particular after this one, I guess we'll just do one more. So if there's something anybody wants to see.
We did have one question, Rachi. Someone asked, getting ahead of ourselves, but what temperature and for how long will you be baking these?
Okay, good question. So we're going to bake it at 350 Fahrenheit. And you're going to bake a medium challah for about 30 minutes. So how do you know when your challah is done? The bottom of the challah should be really nice and browned. It should, you should be able to tap it. It should be crisp and it should sound hollow when you tap the bottom of the challah. And that will be a challah that is ready to come out of the oven. Make sure when you take your challah out of the oven that you take it out of whatever pan it's in and put it on a cooling rack so that nice crisp bottom doesn't become a soggy bottom, which is what will happen if you leave it on the pan. So don't forget that final step. Let it cool completely before putting it away. Okay, so I have 4 strands now. I'm going to do my little spraying trick. Now I'm going to make a little tic-tac-toe. You may have seen this online. I'm going to just do like a weave over under. Pretty simple. Can everyone see it? And now we have 4 sets of 2, right? 2 strands on each side. We're going to take each set has one that goes under and one that comes over. So you're going to take the one that goes under and cross it on top of the over. And you're just going to go all the way around like that. And you're gonna go back around the other way now. The one that's under goes over. You're just crossing, no great braiding techniques needed. And now we're gonna go back around the other way. You're gonna take those edges, tuck them under, and look how beautiful that is. And that is a round braided challah with 4 strands. Are there any particular requests? Anybody wants to see any particular braid, or should I just,
Can you talk about egg wash?
yeah, so the most golden egg wash that you'll get is if you do just the yolk with about a teaspoon of water. And what I like to do is do 2 washes. So wash it right after you've, do 1 glaze right after you've braided. And then you're gonna let it rise again before it goes in the oven, and glaze it once more right before you go in the oven. That double glaze will get you a really golden challah. Even if you're not getting out much, at least your challah will look like it is. Okay.
Can you braid it again? Can you show us the braid again? You did it so fast.
Well, so I have all these in my book, step by step. So it's kind of hard to on the spot like this. So this is just for like to see the possibilities. And then, I hope you take your time through the book. I actually got the funniest message the other day. Somebody wrote to me, she's like, I have 2 left hands. I don't do this whole braiding thing. But she said her daughters started coming down in the morning with these crazy braids in their hair. And she was like, where is this coming from? And they showed her that they took my cookbook into their room and they've been using it to braid their hair every morning. So, there's a lot of ways you can use the cookbook. I'm just going to show you one more fun round challah technique, which is really just like a weave, but you make it into a wreath. And it's really nice to do this as like a challah centerpiece. Especially many people have the tradition to dip the challah in honey throughout the month of Tishrei, these holiday season. So, because we just want to keep adding the sweetness. So this is a nice way to make your challah into a nice centerpiece. If you're going to be a guest anywhere, I don't know if people are going to anybody's houses, but if you're going to be a guest somewhere, this is a great hostess gift. Bring this on a platter with a